Hey, everybody. Well, we got the intro off. That's a good start. We'll see if I can keep myself from booting myself out of my own live tonight. How's everybody doing? It's Friday, finally. And like I saw in the meme, Friday's here. There's no body counts, and I didn't need bail money, so it's all good. How's Rebecca? Rebecca's here. Lori's here. We got Kathy. Who else is here? So far, people sliding in. Appreciate y'all coming in tonight. We're just gonna have a little fun tonight. Next week is going to be really interesting because I get a chance to interview Old Bear instead of the other way around. So I'm gonna have a little fun with that. Now that we're friends, I'll get into the story of Old Bear and I in a little bit because it was kind of a rocky start to what's now a wonderful brothership. So no, Rebecca, I don't know about scaring. So actually, we're going to have a lot of question and answers. I'm going to remind everybody, about some of my experiences, and then we are going to let you ask questions that maybe didn't get answered on some of these other interviews I've done. I did one the other night on a DA Roberts show. It was really fun. So if you want to catch that, that's great. If not, I'm going to cover a lot of what I talked about there anyway. So hey, opinions are kind of like skunk butts. They all got one and they all stink, in some people's eyes, but I want to hear your questions because to me, that's going to keep me honest with you. And that's all I want is honesty and transparency. So, and also listening to your questions helps me in the long run learn the things I should be asking myself when I'm out in the field. So it's kind of I really like this format because, I get to talk with you. It's not just talk to you. I try to keep track of the chat as best as I can. And there's interaction. That's why I love being here. And first question by Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. Fire away. Let's go. F and go, as they say these days. I remember when effing would have got me a rap in the mouth. How about any of you guys? Even breathing heavy. That sigh would have had a flip flop on my butt to get my attention. Thanks for stopping in. Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. It's always good just to see you, Victoria, my friend. Adore ya. And Rebecca, get the keys because you never know where these questions are going to go, as you well may know. Are we going to talk about Bigfoot? Are we going to talk about new affiliation with Sweet and Low, maybe, or cease and desist order from them, one or the other? Oh, Lori got a broom. I think I'll take the flip flop. So, Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show asks, best advice to give a new researcher is to listen to others, go into the woods thinking you're going to have nothing, because then if something does happen, it's a surprise. Look for things out of the normal. Go in there a few times and really, stay consistent in a place, because that way, it's normal, the normal animal sounds, what the normal terrain looks like. For instance, where I'm at, the wind comes off Lake Michigan pretty stiff in the wintertime. So there's constantly being trees blown down. But then all of a sudden you'll be walking through and the trees are all blowing one direction, but you get one or two that have crossed or are leaning completely the opposite direction than any other tree in the area. So why is that? You got to look for it's just the little things out of the norm. And sometimes those little things can lead to some bigger things because you go over and investigate the tree. Maybe you're lucky and get a hair. Maybe you'd find a half a footprint or something. So be very consistent in the area that you're working. Oh yeah, without a doubt. Rebecca says I'd have been in deep scat using the F word, and I would have been in deep scat even using the S word. So, and Lori, we are going to talk about Bigfoot. We're going to talk about a little bit how I got started for people who are new and haven't listened to me before. And so, you know, when I grew up with Bigfoot being real in my life. There was no, pretending because in the woods at my grandma's house, there were strange, unexplained things happening. And we were always told that, one section of the woods was where Bigfoot was. And every time you went in those areas, either the dog wouldn't go at all, or the fact that the dog would, take off running. And Lori, I'm in Michigan. This is Benzie County, Michigan. I'll go that far with it. And when you went into the woods, no matter what, once you got off the main path and went down a 2-track, you would get that hair on the back of your neck just standing up and like you were being watched. So it was always there. And then, we were told, whether in a joking manner or not, I don't know, but that's where the Bigfoot lives. So one night while I was at home and we're watching In Search of Leonard Nimoy, they show the Patterson Gimlin film. And I point to the TV and I'm like, hey, Dad, what's that grandma's? Is that Bigfoot? That grandma's? And he's like, well, not that one, but yeah, that's supposed to be what's out of grandma's. So I think that aired in 75 or 76. So I was only 5 or 6 years old and already growing up with Bigfoot just being part of the game. And then during that time, there was also an incident where my grandpa, who was a deputy for the sheriff's department, worked nights. Hey, Lenny. And also, it was like a lightning storm out. So lots of flashes of light, but not really any heavy rain or thunder. And then all of a sudden the dog came running underneath the bed, who was at that time his name was Buffy, and he was like a big sheep dog. And under the bed he went. And while my grandma was watching the window from her bed, there was a flash of lightning and it lit up the whole window, and the whole window had a huge human type silhouette, but the head was above the window frame from outside. And so she grabbed the shotgun, got in bed, and called my grandpa. This is 3 or 4 in the morning, who came with the rest of the sheriff's department. And they did a full-blown investigation out there. They found tracks right outside the house that were 17 inches. They cast them. And then the, depth gauge determined whatever made it was between 500 and 700 pounds. They were also able to track it a little bit back into the woods. So there is actually a police report from that, where my grandpa lived and grandma lived, of that Bigfoot interaction. In the early 80s, my aunt, who lives a few miles up the road, they were having problems with chickens being stolen. So they got a dog thinking it was coyotes or something. And then one night they hear the dog go ballistic and they hear a huge crash. So they go outside and the fence was tore down and they had a wooden chicken coop, but there was a big hole in the wall of the chicken coop. And they looked and there were 17-inch tracks going through the chicken yard and then right out to the chicken coop. So they figured the dog chased it, and instead of trying to jump over or around, it just ran right through the chicken coop. So they had the state police, the DNR, Michigan DNR, Department of Natural Resources. They also had couple of the local papers there, and they all made a report on it as well. And so Benzie County is already turning into a pretty hot spot. And then in 1987 was when I had my sighting, and I was coming around a corner. I had my bright headlights on. I was listening to some music, just trying to, I'm 16 years old, trying to clean my teenage head because, girl troubles, end of the world, things like that. And I saw I don't know why I thought it was a big bag of garbage for some reason at first. I thought, that's just really irritating. And then as I got closer, I saw it had hair. It was curled up against the guardrail, but it was big, even crouched. So I turned around. I pulled up and turned the high beams on, and it wouldn't move. Because at this point, I thought this was how to, I'm going to see a big bear, and he's going to move one way or another, even if I got to tap him with my bumper. And got within a few feet of him, and then this bear stood up and squared off to my car, and his shoulders were as wide as my car, the outside of the 79 El Camino. So it had two big yellow softball-sized eyes staring at me, and it was so tall it was outside of the beams of the headlight, but you could see the light reflection. And I was going to honk the horn, and whether it was mind speak or just a sixth sense, something told me, if you hit that horn, it's going to be a very bad night for you. So my hands above the horn for a few seconds. It just turned back to the left, stepped over the guardrail, and it was gone. And then I saw a question already. Victoria had one, I believe. My favorite Hulk episode is anyone where he turns green and smashes things. So, which in the Avengers movie now, they're kind of wimping him down. Rebecca wants to know, a good subject, does Bigfoot have relationship and dating problems, girl trouble, depression, courtship? I bet they do, because think about it. You got an alpha male all over everything. And if you want a shot at a little snuggle time with one of the females, you got to beat up the alpha male. And the odds of that are probably not very good because he's been the alpha for so long. Or imagine a new guy trying to wander in through the, a small male trying to find his own harem, if you will, or clan. And all of a sudden, he's got to meet dad. Not only meet dad, he's got to beat dad. So how do you go about that? That's kind of I wouldn't want to have to go dating and, realize I'm going to have to arm wrestle somebody just to ask to date their daughter. Lori, I've been quite skeptical for many years regarding Sasquatch, but after research and references from highly sane and credible sources, I'm intrigued. We are humans. Others exist. And they do. And the topic of if they're human or not is where people get, people get really bent out of shape about this. To me, it's like anything's on the table. They seem human. They look very humanish. What is it, 99 point some percent, or 98, I'm sorry, percent human, and then 2% was unknown primate or unknown father. So they might not be human, but to me, that they could still be a type of people. It's just unrecognized. I mean, I know chimps and gorillas chimps especially share even more DNA. And Rebecca, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know this for a fact. I see Old Bear's in the house. Maybe he can help, but I think it's only as long as he can stay dominant. It's kind of like a lion's den or other type of cat in that, or even like hyenas have hierarchy. So unless you're the alpha male, I don't know exactly how that works. Yeah, Rebecca, arm wrestling would be a bare minimum to get in the door. That's for sure. Speaking of old bear, hello, my friend. So yeah, at that point, I knew about Bigfoot, seen a Bigfoot, and sat on that experience for over 30 years because right around the same time we were having paranormal experiences at my house. We would have this basketball. It sounded like a basketball. We moved into the house. All the kids were downstairs, and all of a sudden you hear bump, 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 bump. And my grandma would yell, "Hey, you kids, knock it off with that ball." We were all downstairs. So we just kind of wrote it off as one of those things, but then it continuously happened, probably daily, if not multiple times a day. And it even got to the point where during the holidays, people would hear that, whole family of 20 plus people in our house and get to know the fact that, yeah, there was something up there bouncing a ball. The only time where, and I had just told about this experience a couple of months before I saw the Bigfoot. And this experience is why I did not reveal the Bigfoot experience for decades, was because one night while I was in bed, our my bedroom door opened very hard. It scraped across the floor. And one night I was laying there, my eyes open, but I couldn't move. It was like sleep paralysis. Couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but move my eyes. And then the door opens quietly, and in walks, I thought he was a demon, but it was like 3 feet tall, shadow person with bright yellow eyes and bright yellow teeth. And he smiles at me, stands there a few seconds, walks out the door. The door quietly closes behind him, and then I'm able to start screaming my head off. So I tell everybody about this, and of course I got laughed at and mocked at, and oh, my little shadow friend, and all the things like that. This was one case, though, where probably 10 years later, after I had moved out, I get a phone call asking me to come home for a little while. And I get there, and my two aunts and uncles are both sitting there, and they said they wanted to apologize because one aunt and uncle had come to visit, slept in that room, and the door opened. My aunt starts shaking my uncle, who's a very light sleeper, shakes him so hard he falls out of the bed, still sleeping. And the shadow person looked at her, smiled, walked out, and then turned around, and my Uncle Steve woke up wondering why the heck he was on the floor. So they wanted to apologize for all those years of just relentless. Even when I moved out, it was like, make sure you take your little friend with you. So, but I still wasn't brave enough to tell him about the Bigfoot. And don't forget, questions are more than welcome on any of this. So please like, subscribe, comment afterwards. If you think of something that you want to ask me after the comments, be sure. Rebecca says the moral of the story is to be a sound sleeper so you don't get scared. Exactly, or do as Marty does, and Nona Boss, and put earphones in, because then they can't get you. If you can't hear them, they can't get you when she's out uh, investigating. Oh, Bear, the question was, do Bigfoot mate for life? I thought it was just as long as the male was dominant, but I honestly don't know. So I'm wondering if you can tell us. Is it a mating for life, or is it just the alpha gets to saying what goes and who breeds with who? So anyway, back to the first time I went actually looking for Bigfoot. was in, and I'm actually going to pull this up on my phone, so sorry for looking away, but I believe it was a friend of mine. I'd gotten in good with the Facebook groups, and a friend of mine told me that if you want a real shot at seeing one of these things, this is where you need to go. And of course, when I head out there, Rebecca says seeing and hearing a rat in the house kept me awake for many nights. Glad I never had a Bigfoot sighting. Yeah, that will change your whole perspective on reality, Rebecca. It definitely, luckily I grew up knowing about it, but there's some people, it rattles them for life. You know, when you start getting PTSD and things like that, all from seeing something that isn't supposed to be real. Hello, Griff. Curiosity, Lori. Why be concerned? Why they may? You know, I wonder how long the gestation period is. You know, is it every year or every couple years? Because it seems like I don't find baby prints every year. It seems like I find them every other year. So it's just kind of my curiosity. I know the main thing is to make sure. I mean, technically, we're talking about imaginary monkeys, right? So mating comes after the fact, but most of us here have our own opinion on just how real they are with all the evidence. I mean, with everything that we've got, you know, Ben Shapiro and Johnny Cochran couldn't get Bigfoot off as being a fake. There's too much out there saying otherwise. Too many eyewitnesses, you know, which is why to me science is. So 2000, when the big C word came through, pandemic, is when I started looking in an area. And the very first time we went out, uh, I took a friend of mine, and she was a total non-believer. Thought I was off my chain going out there and looking for Bigfoot. And so when we get there, it's, you know, it's quiet, it's snowy, it's off season road, and so we started walking down this trail, and being not wanting to draw attention to myself, I clapped instead of, I would do two claps instead of howling or anything like that. And it took about, we'd stop every 100 yards or so and do it. Nothing. We get a mile down the track. And then that's when I look up at a bluff, and it looks like something I thought would be a cool spot to overlook and see, you know, thought that'd be a great spot for Bigfoot. What can they see? And as I took a step, it was like two loud catcher's mitts hitting together. And then I looked at my friend. She's got some tears in her eyes, and I said, "You know, it takes hands to clap." And she's like, "Yeah, I want to go home." And as we left, uh, things got a little crazy. You started hearing a tree knock and then a whoop, and those were behind and to the left. And then you start hearing something pacing us off to our right. And then ahead of us, the metal gate I parked by started rattling. So that not only were they behind us, but now they were on the right hand side and in front of us. And we get back to the truck, and you can see where the snow had been beaten down a little bit, but we didn't take too long to, you know, a little scared at the moment. So it was just time to get out of there and be grateful to get out of there. Hey, Standing Stone. Hello, Twisted. So, and after 6 months, got my nerve back, and we started going out and started finding, you know, taking people's advice, look for things out of the norm. Look for trees that are bent different than the other trees and what could have caused it, why they're in different directions. And that was when we started noticing little patterns. Lori Gibbs says, Lori Sue, I do not think they're superior. I think primate, and we just don't understand behavior. And again, I think everything's on the table. I think they're superior in their element. Just like if they're in the city, they're probably going to get lost and not really know how to pay for their Mountain Dew with the ICAP. But we go out there, that's their world. Not that's the world they live in 24/7, so they understand how everything works with wind direction and everything. I think they have heightened senses as well. And then, everybody's when we started doing that, and I had talked to a lot of people talking about leaving trinkets and stuff, and then I talked about feeding them, and that's when people started mixed reviews. Lori. Lori Sue says, honestly, it strikes me as being so bored as to be concerned as do they pee standing or sitting. Their existence would be far more important on this planet. And I agree. It's just learning the little details, I guess, to put a whole big uh, picture together, depending how serious you want to take the subject or how far you want to deep dive it. Like Titanic, I really enjoy the subject matter, but I'm not nearly as what room so and so stayed in and the exact number and names of the passengers and the whole topic. I mean, there's people that can literally tell you their name, the rooms, the staff that was on the boat, and it's like, nah, I don't want to go there. It's just I want to know how it sank, one piece, stuff like that. So, and the same thing with Bigfoot. Some people are going to want to know every little detail. As far as whether they stand or be. I'm guessing it's probably on the run. Or maybe that's why they can sit so still, so they got careful aim. Maybe they enjoy writing their Bigfoot name in the snow too. Hey, Michelle, how you doing? I agree, Laurie. And that's why I kind of enjoy the platform Grizzly's given me because we can talk about anything. Like right now, we can throw some Titanic in there. Um, I got one of the coins with a piece of the coal in it when they were allowed to bring that up it was the 100th anniversary coin. And supposedly it's got a piece of the coal, with the documentation and everything, but it very well could be a piece of Bridgeford charcoal for all I know, but to me it's Titanic coal. And I think they should do something for the gravesite because, not only are people damaging it further, but now you got people going down in Coke cans with PlayStation controllers and things like that. And don't ask me why I want to conserve the site. I guess in a way it doesn't matter. It's a wreck. But the grave site is, to me, is what's important. You got 1,503 people down there, I believe it was. So that's a lot of souls. That's one thing I was wondered about investigating. I know the logistics would be an absolute nightmare, but could you imagine being able to go down there with some kind of recorder and camera and shut all the lights off and see if you get the orbs and stuff at the Titanic? I mean, they have stuff happen at the museum. So imagine what would happen at the actual site where that happened. And Old Bear's asking if we're on for next Friday. Absolutely. I would not miss this chance for the world. So I'm good if you're good. Yeah, Lori. And if, you know what the crazy thing is too is if Bob Ballard would have brought up 1 teaspoon or one chunk of coal from the Titanic when he found it, he could have claimed the rights to that ship, and Bob Ballard would have preserved that site as an archaeological wonder. So we start, get back to the other stories. We start leaving little gifts out, and we start with the simple things in life, like anything we could think of, like little food wise, peanuts and old bear. I will get that to you 9 o'clock. I can tell you for sure, and then I'll send you the link. Hopefully Messenger is good. That's the only one I've been good at so far, is making sure they get the link. So let me know if that doesn't. Please, old bear. Right, Larry. Larry says, we're going back to Titanic here. He could, but now people dump on it. No respect. I know, just the amount of plates, supposed memorial plaques that have been down there. I guess is their way of leaving flowers. Not really into that. And the fact that the mast was up, but now because one of the subs hit it, the mast has bent down. The crow's nest, which is one of the most important pieces in history of that thing, is now fallen into the main part of the wreck because the sub bumped it. So, Lori, thank you so much. That's really nice of you, Lori. I really appreciate that. A first, too. Thank you. Scott M., off topic, but what about cryptid in North Carolina and Tennessee since the hurricane? I've often wondered what they do, because you hear so many stories of, animal like being displaced. Where do they go? Awesome, old bear. I can't wait to see you. I get to interview you, and we get to sit around and talk more friend stuff. When, like St. Helen, when Mount St. Helen went off, you hear reports of the Bigfoot being nursed back to health, and then some of them carried away in cargo nets. I wonder if there's some type of truce, if they're as intelligent as we think they are, where because of a disaster and the clans have to move into another clan's territory, does that clan go, okay, but you only got 30 days and then we're going to evict you? Or is there a fight right off the bat? I would think there would be some kind of truce, and maybe Over will be kind enough to answer that one as well, because I'm sure he knows. Folks, if you haven't heard Old Bear before, this is going to be great, because he's a wealth of knowledge. He is a no BS kind of guy. If you ask a question, be ready for the answer, because he's going to give it to you straight. So that's just the way he is. And it was a great question, Scott, because everything gets displaced. I saw alligators swimming down the road in Florida when that happened, and houses and things like that. A couple sharks in the mall, if I remember right. It's crazy what things will happen. Look at the Burmese pythons. I mean, when that hurricane went through, people think it was because of released pets, which maybe had something to do with it, but not much. What really triggered that whole python thing was the fact that a pet store that was basically a tent, from what I understood, had 100 pythons in it, baby ones. And when the hurricane went through, it just spread them all over the swamp. So, and they weren't all related. So now you got 100 pythons that are capable of breeding with up to 100 eggs per clutch. And it took a few years, which would run the same timeline as a python becoming old enough to breed. So if you look at when they got released to the point when they started appearing in some numbers, it's right along those same timelines. I used to raise Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons. Boulder says there's a spring camp out. I am ordered to be there, and I will do my best to fulfill that order, my friend. So, I mean, when we're back to displaced animals, they have a way. They're going to survive and get new territory. Lori, that's the problem. Lori says she doesn't camp, and then Lori, that's the problem I have. My idea of roughing it is going to a hotel room that doesn't have cable. So hopefully Grizz goes, and there'll be some glamping I can do. Lori says the swamp is overgrown and so intruded. Oh, absolutely. The amount of invasive species now. I mean, the pythons alone eliminate 98% of the small animals, like your raccoons and your possums and things like that. And now they've also become tolerant to the cold. Now, instead of killing them outright, I'm sorry, putting them to sleep permanently, the weather, they just hibernate. Where they're used to find, dozens of unalive pythons, now they're finding like 3 or 4. So they're becoming more tolerant, which means that trait is going to be passed on to the younger ones, and they're going to be able to tolerate even colder weather and move farther north. Yeah, both lawyers, I'm with you. Glamping's the way to go. And I think that stems from when the last time I camped I was probably 10 years old, and we went camping and left the one zipper door open for the screen, and a skunk came in and shared his essence with everybody. Yeah, I haven't been since. I just take a hard pass. So to get to some of the encounters we've had out there, one of the most, we started with leaving peanut butter was when things really started to take off out there, and led to uh, one of the scariest nights of my life, where my friend Shauna and we saw some deer prints. And what had happened was you could see the deer prints run up the hill, but then beside it were 2 huge. At the time, I couldn't tell exactly what they were, but they looked like footsteps, and they were perfectly in line. And I said, I know what made those. And so we got out, went up the hill without the flashlights, could hear things popping here and there. And then she's like, what the F? Turn the flashlight on. And so I did. And right at the edge of the flashlight was, between 7 and 8 foot, brownish orange, unhappy squatch. As soon as the light hit, the left arm came up and lets out the loudest roar that would, it just rattled us, went right through our clothes, your bones and everything. And I turned around immediately, put my keys in her hand, and was pushing her because she wasn't moving fast enough for me. She was 105 pounds. She had stage 4 cancer at that time. And I'm like, go. If I'm not behind you in 30 seconds, you go. And so I get her in the truck. My feet hit the truck, or ice under the truck. I fall under it, and I can hear whatever it is coming from behind us. So now I don't, and then my truck starts. So she took me seriously. And then, yeah, exactly. I managed to get back in the truck, push her over, and we back up and we leave. And the next day, we go back, and with another friend of mine, and took pictures, and they were 23-inch prints. So whatever was out there was, according to the measurements, if you go by the 2-to-1, you're looking at a 12, 13 foot squatch. And I had taken a picture just before we went up there, and it got sent out to Bob Daigle. Oh, Lori, we got millions of deers in Michigan, everywhere, millions. And then Bob Daigle looked at him, and I thought if anybody was going to debunk and shred these pictures, it would be him. But he actually circled them and sent it back and said I had two of them on the left and one on the right. So we walked in between two or three squatches. And so if they wanted to quote unquote get us, that could happen at any time. Yeah, I was worried I might have been a kebab when, Old Bear says Brian and friend kebabs. Yeah. Speaking of kebabs, I remember seeing you for the first time on the show, and I'll tell everybody, well, I'll wait till tomorrow night when you're on. That's even better. No sense going into that now or next time. Lori, I'm done backpacking, tenting, camping, and peeing with bears. Yeah, I could see that. Have you had some experience with the bears coming into camp? What state are you in? Scott M. I'm in Michigan, Macomb County. We need to get together, Scott, because right in between us, there are some awesome areas full of Squatch activity, especially as of late. I'm up in Grand Traverse County, but Manistee and Benzie County have been blowing up lately, from what I hear. Right now it's rifle season, so everything's kind of quiet in my area. And with the way people deer hunt up here, I really don't care to be out in the woods. Whether you're wearing orange or not, it could, depending on the time of day you're out there, could be a problem. Not only that, I don't want to mess up anybody's hunt either. That's even more important. Up here, deer is groceries. And Old Bear, envy incoming, eating chocolate pie and pumpkin pie. Yes, deep envy. I haven't had, let's see, we've been dieting 6 weeks now. So an oatmeal cream pie or a Swiss roll is as big a cheat as I get. Standing Stone says, Brian, stay out. Stay out of what? Trouble won't happen. Spotlight never will happen. So nothing to stay out of there. Oh, the woods. No, the woods is where I feel most at home. As weird as it sounds out there right now, that's my favorite place to be when that can happen. I can shut my mind off. The city's gone. The whole woods is just peaceful, whether it's animal sounds, and even getting a rock at the feet is way better than any part of the work week. Oh, deer season, stay away. Gotcha. Standing, thank you. Yeah, they'd be crazy up here. We had people in Benzie County who have cows, milking cows, and beef cows, and every year at least one gets popped. He even went out a couple years ago and put in big white stencil letter COW, and one still got popped. So they go by hearing, not by sight. Thinking maybe we should, I don't know how many people, I guess I should tell the story for those who haven't heard, about the sweet and low box in the freezer. And because I have an idea for them. So one day we're out and look down, and laying on the ground is a straight, big, long, I have a size 15, and at least 3 of my shoes, what looked like just a big, to me, it screamed Bigfoot poop scat all day long, but it was frozen to the ground. And so I had texted a friend, and he's like, get a sample of it, put it in something. I got a friend who will analyze it. So I had a little plastic baggie with me, and unfortunately no gloves or anything. So as gross as it is, I'm digging at Bigfoot poo. and get a few pieces off, a couple pounds worth, and stick it in the bag and throw it in my backpack. And we keep going, walking. And all of a sudden you get this horrific smell. It's like, what the fire truck is that? And realized that the fudgesicle was starting to thaw out in my backpack from my body heat. So we took it and threw it in the truck, and then I came home and put it. The only thing I had handy was a sweet and low box. So I put it in the sweet and low box. Yeah, it was nasty. It took 3 days to get out of the back seat of my truck, and it took almost 7 because once it started to smell the back seat up within 5 minutes, I threw it in the back of the truck, and it took almost 7 days to get it out of the bed of the truck. It was horrible. Old Bear, how could you breathe clean and poo? It was frozen at first. I don't think I could have done it if it was thawed out. But so now it's in the sweet and low in my box. My friend never came through with somebody to analyze it yet. And one day while doing a podcast on Grizzlies Network, the subject came up about it. And I said, oh, hey, wait, I got some of that in my freezer, in the sweet and low box. And Elaine didn't know about it. I found out about it live. So there's what in my freezer? So anyway, I think Sweet and Low should come out with a evidence box. Something with to the effect of keep what you find on the low, keep it safe in a box of a Sweet and Low. Something like that we could do. Lori says, while I was building the dome house, I had a tent erected with a few freeze-dried supplies. I left a week, only come back and find the 6-person tent demolished and powdered laminated packets strewn. Oh, so the bears, now I can see why. Yeah, bears are pretty ruthless when it comes to that. It's funny because depending on the attitude of the Sasquatch, you hear about them walking into your camp, opening a cooler and grabbing something, and then walking out and shutting the cooler. But then there's other times like where they toss everything around. So, if anybody's got questions about these things popping up, let me know. And then at one point, and this is where, I guess if you would call it, I know I got a lot of good data, I got a lot of good evidence due to the feeding, but there was also, as with anything, the bigger the prize, the bigger the price. And that's something people should always consider when dealing with anything in life, but especially wildlife, because what happened was I got extremely sick. I missed well over 3 weeks of going out for feeding. And it was roughly a month to 5 weeks before I got back out. Things were normal when I was back doing things. And then about 2 weeks into it, I was told to contact the DNR, the Michigan DNR. And so I did. And it was over, as she put it, littering was part of the issue, but the fact that feeding the wildlife was starting to harass the people who lived out there on the one side of the road, and the bears were causing issues. They were coming out of hibernation and causing issues. And I was like, bears? And she's like, yeah, the bears are the ones that are causing the issues at the houses. So I asked her if it was recorded. She said no. And I said, well, in the 2.5 years I've been there at that point, I've never seen a bear track, never seen a bear scratch, or bear. And I've never had bears clap back at me, leave 23-inch footprints, and throw rocks at my truck. And so she was like, what? And I said, no, that's as far as I want to go. Mind you, I'm scared because I'm talking to the Department of Natural Resources and I don't know what's going to happen. And then she told me, well, she wanted my trail cams, which I don't put any out because I'm just worried somebody's swiping them. And then she wanted the pictures off my phone. And I says, well, I really don't have anything. And what I do have, you're going to have to get something that says you can have it. She says, well, we talked to the people. They're not going to kick you out, but you just have to quit feeding the bears. So then once I go back out there and it was cleaning everything up, one of the neighbors came out and talked to me and said, we're sorry that we had to do this, but at the same time, once you disappeared, about 2 weeks, our motion lights started going off. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. So we looked at the cameras and something was throwing peanut butter jars into the yard. They were bouncing through the yard. And that was causing the motion detectors to go off. That goes on for about a week. And then a week later was what I feel horrible about. And if I do have one regret in life, this would be it, because it had to, a little girl, she was 5 or 6 at the time, woke up screaming, and her parents came in, and there was a Sasquatch staring in their window on the second story floor. So I can only imagine what was going through her mind and their mind. And at that point, they had there's 3 houses out there. They had like a little community meeting and said, got to put a stop to it. We're going to call the DNR. So that's where that happened. So that was where I learned that gifting is not a good idea, as far as, especially feeding. I'm still up in the air on like blue rocks and things like that, but food out of the question, because as naive as I was, and even a sense of arrogance, because it was like, I can control this, they're going to stay over here. They're not going to bother anybody else because they know it's me doing it. But, it was their rules and their game the whole time. They had full control of the situation. Old Bear says you had her over a barrel and she knew it. Intimidation from her. Yeah, well, and that's the other thing, Old Bear, was the fact that they sent somebody from an hour and a half away instead of having a local person talk to me who was less than 10 minutes away. So I think a total guess on my part, but she must have had training in how to deal with this kind of things before. So Scott M., the Bigfoot, called that a pack and play. What area? We're talking Benzie County, Scott, in Michigan. So that's as close as I'll get with that. So then I decided to go out and try my luck with other things. We've been working with like crystals and things like that, and been having some positive results with that, especially for some reason the color blue. We put 3 or 4 piles of crystals out, put a blue one in with it, and then the blue one's the only one that disappears. Last time we put a blue crystal inside a burn barrel, that one disappeared. And then there was another one that we put in a fishbowl, in a pipe, and then covered the ends of the pipe. And we came back and found the fishbowl laying outside the pipe and the blue stone gone. So I don't know what it is with the color blue, but they seem to like it. Mr. Dirt Road Bigfoot, thank you. How you doing, bud? And then as of this year, we did have a pretty cool, really scary encounter, because I learned the hard way that not to call blast that Ohio howl. I don't know what it's saying. I don't know if it's saying, hey, your significant other's a scrub and your kids are mine, but I played that Ohio howl call and I wound up with a log in the back of my truck from my troubles one night. And we went to a new place in Manistee County. And what happened was my friend got out, and while I'm fumbling with a recorder, he does an Ohio howl. I was so mad I wanted to put my foot between the cheeks and push him over the rail, but it had a knock right away. So it was like, oh, okay. And yes, old bear told me not to do it. And that was why I was so mad when my friend did it because he knew better, but he's experienced way more than I have. Some people go out and they just want a reaction. It's like, I'm not looking for just a reaction. I want a good interaction. I don't really feel like getting stomped by the alpha male because I did the Ohio haul, but that's what he does. And we go out and we keep hearing an occasional knock. And then at one point, it starts getting we're passing tree structures on the left and tree structures on the right, X's on both sides of the path, which was weird. I've never had that happen before. Manistee County, Scott. Manistee. Apologize for my speech. And we looked down into this valley, and there's a weird structure that was huge pine trees, but they were laying vertical. And they were stacked like a log cabin, but they were in a triangle with one end open. And he would knock, and he'd hear a little knock back. And then dirt road Bigfoot hello. At first they were fairly distant, but then the ones that were closer they weren't as loud, but they were lighter. It didn't sound like they had as much behind them, I guess you would say. It'd be like a T-ball and a Barry Bonds. And then they would hit, trade back and forth. And then the one in the valley started getting rhythmic and faster. And I thought, oh, that's a woodpecker. And then just about the same time, my friend says, oh, crap, there's babies. We hear a huge tree knock way off to the left, and we hear a whistle off to the right. And before we knew it, because he's like, there's babies, we overstepped some boundaries. Before we knew it, the knock and whistle happened again, but it was way closer. So we decided to start to leave. And I look up, I hear a big crack, more like a tree break than a knock, and look over and see three, two big blackish brown big boys, 7 foot plus. They had to be 600 to 800 pounds easy because they were big. They were really big. And then there was a smaller brown one off to the right, pacing back and forth. So we're like, okay, we're in deep trouble now because they've called in the cavalry. We started talking to them, saying, hey, we're sorry, we're leaving. We didn't know they were babies. And within 10 steps, we turned around and looked, and they had closed the gap to 40 yards. And at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to be a statistic in somebody's book. So, I'm literally sending my GPS to people saying, hey, if you don't hear from me in a half an hour, this is where I'm at. And they paced us all the way out. And on the way in, we had been looking for anything like tree structures or type of any sign and didn't see anything. But once we finally got to the parking lot and left, on the way out, up in some trees where there was absolutely nothing above them, was a 6 or 7 foot log, at least 12 inches around, just vertical, hanging there. So I took a couple pictures of it and sent it to a couple people. And, Old Bear said that it was a warning, for me to stay out, basically saying, we know how big you are. This is how big you are. You come back and you're next in the tree. So, but being dumb, I did go back a week later. Sorry, Old Bear. But I just got some pictures and then got that feeling, go now, last chance. So I left, and I haven't been back since. Scott says there's tons of activity in the ministry. So now everybody listening knows a little more about me and experiences, and we even talked a little Titanic tonight. Does anybody have any questions before we start wrapping this up? I do have grandkids here, so as much as I would like to stay and talk even more, I do want to answer any questions, though. Shin kicks incoming. Well, that's better than I thought I was going to get, so I'll take them. And if anybody's had experiences themselves and they want to come on, or you know what, you've got some kind of topic that you're really interested in, we are hidden behind hidden realms. So I want to talk about a lot of different things and not just Bigfoot. I do have a thing I'm putting together on TikTok influencers and what goes on behind the scenes and how good they can be and also how toxic they can be and what they're doing to kids. And, just to give you some kind of example of what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, there's a TikToker, one of the original OG fitness guys, John Skywalker. If anybody of you looked him up, he was a big partier and PED abuser and promoting that lifestyle of heavy doses and partying and all kinds of stuff. I think he's been on there 8 years. And now he's laying in a hospital bed after a couple heart attacks on dialysis trying to get water off his heart because of his lifestyle. But how many of his, I believe he's over 3 million followers, how many of those 3 million followers are going to follow him now because of what he promoted? So I want to make people aware of, just because what you see on TikTok with that big build is just a split second in time compared to what these eggheads are doing behind the scenes. Some of them are just plain wankers. I mean, that's the only clean way I can say it. You got this new guy, and I call him out by name. I don't care. You got Toady, who's gambled away his life savings, and now he's having his blood work came down, but it still looks like crap, and he thinks he's winning the victory lap. It's a total freaking wanker, and yet these people are following him. And I think he finally got to the point where he's gonna stop promoting it. But anyway. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we're going to call it a night, folks. I really appreciate you guys coming in and spending some time with me. Lori says, never have witnessed a drunk Bigfoot, only a drunk buffoon. Yeah. Yeah, I was a bartender. My mom owned a bar for 17 years, so I've seen plenty of them, And that was why, interesting story real quick. My mom would never hire a male bartender. So I challenged her on it. Why? Why would you hire a male bartender? She says, all right, try it and find out. And sure enough, what would happen is a woman would cut a guy off and he would grumble, insult her, blah, 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 and walk out. If a guy cut him off, they want to go outside. First thing they want to do is take you outside because you just pissed in their Wheaties, peed in their Wheaties. So I think I lasted about 3 weeks. Lori Sue Bryan, you're an absolute gem. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. And I always look forward to Friday nights. Look forward to tomorrow night too. Kenny and I got a really good topic tomorrow night on stories for bedtime. So, we're going to see what the ultimate price for fame is paranormally. So as Grizzly would say, from coast to coast around the world, guys, have a great night, a blessed weekend. And, I hope God shows you all love and safety this weekend.